Okay, I was thinking about something the other day and I thought was interesting. I wanted to share it, and it's relevant. And it goes back a few years actually. I remember years and years ago hearing that we're almost all empty space. So like if you were to take out the empty space in our atoms and whatnot, that we'd be almost all empty space. And that was always weird to me because everything that I touch feels really real, right? Like this feels super real. I can pick it up and hold it. And so I did the math on it years ago, and I remember thinking, okay, if an atom is basically a nucleus in the middle, packed super tightly with material like protons, neutrons, etc. Smaller, we can break those down into smaller elements, but call it a nucleus. And around it is spinning electrons, electron or electrons. And we used to look at it, the old model, if you look at the old atomic model, looked like a nucleus in the middle and then electrons spinning around like an orbit, like planets to a sun. That's not how it really is. We've discovered that through the observer effect, frankly, that you have a nucleus and you have electrons or electron spinning around it, and it exists more in a cloud of potentiality around that nucleus, and essentially exists at every single place at the same time. The only time that you could predict where it is if you're observing it. So you have this observer effect that takes effect when you're looking at this atom or the potential place of the electron. I remember I wanted to see, okay, well, if you were to figure out how much empty space is really in there, it's such a small little thing, we can't really tell, right? So I wanted to scale it up. So we did some math, and I say we very generously. I got some serious help on this. I'm not a mathematician. My 8th grader knows way more than I do about math. But we did some math. We figured out, okay, if you took a nucleus and you scaled it up to the size of a basketball, which is 9.5, 10 inches in diameter, 10 inches in diameter, how far away would the electron be? And the math says that depending on the type of atom, the electron would be anywhere from 9 to 15 miles away. Call it 9 to 13 miles away. And it would be smaller. The electron would be much, much smaller than a speck of dust. So you have this thing where you have every possible location of this electron is full of where that electron is going to be surrounding this basketball-sized nucleus, but it's in 15 miles in either direction. So you have this 30-mile diameter sphere in every direction of where this electron could possibly be. And in between this basketball and speck of dust, 15 miles in any direction, is all empty space. Yeah, science does show that there's fluctuations of energy, potential energy. They call them even virtual particles, but nothing that would have any weight, nothing that would have any mass. As small as all these things are, they still have mass. And I was thinking, man, that is a lot of empty space. 10, 15 miles in any direction. That's wild. It's if you were to reduce another after I read that, I found an article that said if you had a nucleus the size of a marble, the atom would be the size of a football stadium, right? Except the scale of it and the size of it is so small that it's hard to even comprehend. But when you scale it up and you think about it in that, you realize just how much empty space there actually is. A football stadium-sized atom with an electron so small you couldn't even see it, and a nucleus the size of a marble. That's what we call matter. That's what we call solid matter. That's what we call things that we can touch and feel. They're all made up of that stuff. Protons, neutrons, nucleus, and electrons in a cloud of potentiality. In fact, the funny thing is we've never actually even touched anything. Part of the interesting illusion of this is we've never actually touched anything. There's a repulsive energy from each electron, and when one electron comes into contact with the other electron from something else, the electrons don't actually touch. There's a repulse energy and things feel solid because this electron exists in every potential space at the same time. And when it comes close to being in contact with another electron from something else, it's really just the force, the negative repulsive force of that electron that is repelling what's touching it, and it gives us the feeling of it being real. So while I'm knocking on this desk, it's not actually there. It's not actually real. It's mostly empty space. There's 10 to 15 miles of empty space in between a basketball and a speck of dust. That tells you something about reality. That tells you something about the illusion. The Tao talks about the world of 10,000 things. Maya is a term from ancient Buddhism and Hinduism. The goddess Maya. Maya, the etymology of Maya is Ma, and I believe that means to bring into existence or to create form. The goddess of Maya is known as the goddess that brings things into form, right? Or makes reality real. I'm sure I could say that more eloquently, but that's how I remember it. But it's not. What we think is real is just mostly empty space. In fact, I did some math this morning because I was thinking about this and I wanted to record this video. And again, I got lots of help with the math. But if you were to take my body, like I'm 230 pounds and over 6 feet tall, and if you were to reduce all the empty space inside me down and compact it all just as tight as you could, how big would I be? And the answer is I would be much, much smaller than a grain of sand. In fact, you could fit about 2,000 of me in a single grain of sand. That's how much of me actually exists as real matter. Yet there's nothing that feels more real to me than me. Not even you all. Like all the people in my life, you could all be part of the Truman Show and I could just be the center of this cosmic joke, right? Because I feel real. I can't prove that any of you are real, but I feel real. And in reality, the part of me that's real that I think I'm touching could fit in 1/2000th of a grain of sand. That's an illusion. That's a pretty wild illusion. If you took all of humanity, all 8 billion of us, and did the same thing, we'd exist inside something much, much smaller than a marble, size of a small pea probably. If you took the entire world, everything we know is matter, everything we know is real. Every bit of sand and rock and tree and person and building and everything else, if you took everything on this planet that we know is real and you compacted it in the same way, you'd have a sphere that would be very heavy, but it would be about the size of that football stadium. It'd be maybe 1,000 feet in diameter or so. That's everything we think is real. Everything we hold is true. That's how much illusion there is to this life we're living. Well, why am I going through all this? Well, because it dawns on me that a lot of times if we can touch it, we can hold it, we can pick it up, we actually think it's real. Science, if you know me, you know I'm always looking for these intersections of science and spirituality. I'm looking for intersections between different dialects of spirituality that are explaining the same thing, but are all true. I'm looking for all of those commonalities. And science and spirituality have a very interesting commonality right here. When you talk about quantum entanglement, and you talk about the illusion of space and the illusion of time, we're discussing and we're describing the exact same things that science is and that science knows. And science can tell us that anything it wants to about the nature of reality, but we know that it's an illusion, and we know that we're not actually touching anything, we're not picking anything up, and that all of it combined is almost non-existent. It's so small. So what does this tell us about the nature of reality and the nature of illusion? What it means to me is that we, from a metaphysical place, right? I have a degree in metaphysics. The metaphysical place, the things that are beyond physical, metaphysical, the things that we might not be able to touch and hold in our hands are just as important. Faith, love, kindness, the attractive law of attractive nature of this universe, the purpose and passions for our existence, those things that exist outside of the laws of physics or outside of tangible matter that a scientist can put under a microscope. They're just as real, they're just as important. I wrote an article a long time ago called What Thoughts Are Made Of. And thoughts have energy, thoughts have mass. I wish I could figure out how to explain it, how to map it, how to do the math on it. But everything that has ever existed has some mass. If thoughts exist in my brain as an electrical impulse, then that has to have some mass. And yeah, it's so small and infinitesimal that we probably could never explain it, but so am I, when you reduce it all down to its minimal basic. And I'm telling you this because I think that as humanity shifts and as we move away from the illusion and we move more into the things that matter most, even if this one of the very first journeys I ever had was the very first lesson in the very first journey I ever had was where the fifth dimension is. It's right back here behind your heart. It's not a geometric location. It's not a place you go to. It's a place you shift to. It's a consciousness you live from. And it has matter, and it has integrity, and it has form, and it exists someplace. It's just hard to explain where that exists. And it matters just as much as the rest of the illusion does. And I think sometimes as we awaken and as consciousness evolves, sometimes we give a whole lot of weight to the things that we can pick up with our hands. And we tend to think that the rest of it, that our dreams, that the Maya, that the illusion isn't real. And it's just as real as everything else. So I guess the reason I'm telling you all that is to tell you, if you can recognize yourself or everything else around you that you think is real as an illusion, then maybe you can pay just as much attention to the stuff that the rest of the world calls illusion. And maybe you can hold that faith in your hand, or maybe you can hold that love in your hand, or that compassion. Maybe you can hold on to that tangibly, just like you would anything else, or just like you think you do anything else. And maybe that helps us grasp it, so to speak, tight enough that we can hold on to it long enough for it to evolve our consciousness, help us understand how we're all quantumly entangled, that vibration and the change in vibration is a real thing, that we can affect matter, that thoughts do become things, and that you can be part of the change. You can be the catalyst to the whole change. If you just change the way you think, change the energy of your thoughts, change the mass and how everything else attracts into your space, knowing that it's all an illusion, and we created it that way so that you could be the creator of it. Think about that for a minute. Hope that helps. It's fun for me to think about.